back in the early 90s as I stood on a street corner and was nearly squashed by a group of white farmers who hurtled round the corner in their bucky. In the back of the bucky was a white farmer who lay there bleeding to death. That was the first farm murder in our district. Now there's some controversy to the term farm attack. In my opinion, it must go back to the Rhodesian Bush War or back to the South African Border War, in which farmers were regarded as legitimate targets by liberation movements. The entire topic is rendered even more confusing by the fact that we cannot agree exactly what farm murder is. Some may want to classify farm murder strictly by the killing of commercial farmers, while others want to classify farm murder as murders taking place on farms. To complicate matters, the South African Police Service do not actually release information regarding the race of the attacker or of the victim. Hence, we have many rival statistics from rival political fronts. Some say white farmers are attacked on a basis 7 times over the national average, while others say that 40% of farm murders are black. It all depends on how you classify it, how you create your statistics. So, in the realm of statistics, I will tread very carefully. What interests me more is the true nature of these crimes. What were the modus operandi? What are the structures that they take on? Were the victims of these crimes brutally beaten and tortured? And were these brutal beatings and tortured universally seen through all farm attacks across all racial barriers? Are these mere cases of robbery and murder that may actually have an underlying racial tarnish? Are black farmers that are attacked, are they treated in exactly the same fashion? Perhaps it was these factors that alarmed Genocide Watch in the first place. For those of you who do not understand the nature of white farming communities, I shall give you some insight. White farming towns and communities are often very close-knit. In some cases, like the town where I lived, there were many people who were actually related. Now, I know there are some people here who want to make banjo jokes on the back of that one. However, I would like to inform you that whenever there is a murder, there are serious repercussions. The psychological effect is devastating and immediately felt. Likewise, in the rest of the country, some may quote statistics saying that white South Africans are less at risk of being murdered. Perhaps that is true. However, I would like to draw a lesson from the current Gulf War. Currently, the Americans are losing troops, to the extent that some people do not want to continue with the war. However, some analysts have noted that should all those troops return home, the car accidents resulting from their return shall show a casualty rate perhaps similar to that which they see in Iraq. The effect is entirely psychological, and some analysts have gone on to say that this is purely as a result of us having smaller families in this day and age. Smaller families have made us extremely sensitive to things like casualties. Gone are the days of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, in which the US Army sacrificed thousands of men with less concern. Perhaps this is what sensitizes many white South Africans to murder, the fact that they come from very small families. When one may lose one of your 4 children, it is definitely different from losing your only child. Perhaps this is what makes it such a topical issue to many white South Africans. Now, this brings us to a further topic. Land, the old issue in South Africa. Land. Now, I have seen some videos on YouTube in which it is claimed that redistributing the land shall be the solution to the farming situation. However, should one actually distribute that 80% to all the population groups in South Africa, one will empower how much? Yes, 2% of them. In actual fact, one will remain with another 2% of white people who are then disaffected. So, my question is this: why empower only 2% of the population? One needs to empower more, considering how many poor there are in South Africa. Sure, you might say, we can equally break it down to smaller pieces and distribute it among all the people of the rural areas. Sure, this is a brilliant idea. Will that land remain commercially effective, broken down into tiny small holdings? Pick up any first-year sociology textbook, and what will it show you? It'll show you that agriculture was one of the easiest sectors to mechanize. In fact, it resulted in the job loss of many rural people. However, this has been attempted in the past in Africa. Tanzania and Kenya attempted the same thing, and it failed miserably. Production decreased at an alarming rate. Those who suggest these reforms have a primitive and archaic understanding of modern agriculture, which requires large tracts of land and expert management. However, in South Africa, there are alternative plans to get round this. A partnership between international consortiums and local farmers, organized through local government. Here I must point out that perhaps it is not a wise idea. As in other African countries, they opened their doors to the exploitation of organizations such as Del Monte. Many of these organizations are only interested in profits. That's right, they are interested only in overseas markets, cash crops, and exploiting cheap labor. As ethical as the argument for land reform may be, it is by far not a practical solution. In fact, it will pay to keep those farmers exactly where they are. Besides, their spending shall turn the economy over. Every time a buck is earned by one of those farmers, they will spend within the country's economy, buy cars, or perhaps buy new tractors. Whereas everybody else, all the foreign consortiums, every time they earn a buck, they will not reinvest it within the country. They will ship it to their offshore bank accounts. I hope that if they do enlist the support of foreign consortiums, they do at least provide some regulation, so that it doesn't turn into the exploitative model seen in the Third World. However, with the scorpions out the picture, I'm afraid it'll turn into shady deals within the cabinet in dark corners. I fear that the food price shall increase, and there shall be a knock-on effect with inflation. The person who will lose shall be the poor African in his mud hut. I hope that in the future South Africa the diet doesn't change and people sit round a dinner table of pineapples, bananas, granadillas, with a garnishing of pipe tobacco, and all washed down by a late vintage eco-diesel.